everyone. Welcome back to the Sensitivity Doctor. You got Dr. Amelia Kelley here, and today Dr. Rita Renee, a fellow TEDx talker, and I unpack the perils of gaslighting in the workplace. Now, we really wanted to get this one out to you guys during this month, October. This is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And while we're not talking about violence in the home, we are talking about it in the workplace. I want to take a moment to really highlight the importance that if you're listening to this today and you're contemplating making that next step, sometimes it never feels like the right time, but I'm here telling you that I got your back. If there is anything that you need, whether it be resources, a safety plan, ideas on how to get out and find the support you need, how to find resources in the area, I would much rather you try to get out, find the support you need, than wait one more holiday, one more year, one more month. Now is the time. So as you listen to the episode today, know that we're talking about empowering yourself in the workplace, but we also want to highlight the fact that it is so important to focus on your safety in all spaces of your life. If you feel like you're in danger, please go to thehotline.org and find out the different resources in your area. Make that call. You and your family deserve it today. I know how hard it can be to leave, and that's why I got your back. That's why I have so many resources available on my website at ameliakelly.com. Everything from a safety plan to identifying if you're in a trauma bond or not. And honestly, the books that I've put out to the world, I put them out there for you. I know it's hard, but I know you can do it. Dr. Rita Renee and I didn't always agree during this conversation. We had some opposing views about how workplace gaslighting presents for women and what should be done about it. But what I loved so much was the grace that she offered in this conversation and the willingness to learn from each other and see different perspectives. So I really hope you enjoy the episode and find something of value to help yourself today. Enjoy. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Rita Renee.
I'm excited to be here with you.
Yes. And as I was saying, you are my first TED talker here. That was such an amazing experience.
Words cannot describe. I'm so grateful for the opportunity and to meet you. So many
Oh.
other amazing speakers.
I know. Like just how passionate everyone is about what
Yes.
they talked about. And I know we're both chomping at the bit because at least at the moment that we're recording, our recordings are not out yet.
Right.
But maybe, fingers crossed, maybe they'll be out in like the next week or so. We'll see.
Be amazing.
That would be awesome. But yeah, we're actually going to put this conversation out into the world as quickly as possible because literally yesterday was the beginning of Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Such an important, and the timing of it is so important too when you look at the statistics of when folks are most likely to leave. And right now is like that golden moment where I remind people it's not the holidays yet. You're not in the throes of all that. Statistically speaking, this is like the moment to do it, to make that move, to ask for that support.
Absolutely. Very critical time.
Yeah. And so while we're not going to be talking specifically about domestic violence, there are so many other ways that emotional manipulation and abuse can happen. And I know you, and this is why I wanted to talk to you about this, because you have a passion and a fire for empowering people in the workplace.
Yes.
Which is something I care deeply about, but I don't know if I have the fire that you do about it. Like I love allowing people who are like, this is my true passion to like talk on this. But gaslighting in the workplace was something that, based on your talk, which, can you tell everyone what the name of your talk was again?
Moving from boxes to belonging, rethinking DEI and reclaiming excellence.
And something that stood out to me about your talk was what happens when people in the workplace have like preconceived ideas about you.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Speak on that.
Okay.
Go for it.
Sure. A lot of times when people come in the workplace, especially if they're applying for a position, they seem to look at the outer appearance of the person instead of just the knowledge base and what they can actually contribute to the organization. And a lot of times we fall in those pitfalls because we wind up hiring people who aren't a good fit for your organization, and it could be detrimental to your bottom line.
Yeah. And so one of the things that when I know about what you spoke about and what you are passionate about shifting in our culture
Yeah.
is what can happen to people who do get hired kind of under that lens. And then they're put in positions where they're being taken advantage of, not taken seriously, or like we're going to chat about today, potentially gaslit in the
Right.
workplace. Yeah.
It's so unfortunate that, in this era that we're in now where we're trying to check boxes so we can include everyone, it's not beneficial for those who want a opportunity or position, or they're trying to climb that corporate ladder. They're trying to make a name for themselves. They want to share their different talents, but there's a timing, right? And there ought to be that opportunity should only come when they're ready for that opportunity. And that's what I spoke about a lot. Is that person that you're hiring, are they the right fit? But are they also ready, and not just ready in skills, ready mentally? 'Cause we know that when we get into different positions, there's also a lot of different weight to that, right?
Right.
Responsibility to that. Can they handle that? Because they're doing the work of the organization, but also family. So that doesn't go away. The family responsibility and now the weight of that new position. Are they ready, not only in a skill, but mentally, are they ready? Emotionally, are they ready to handle that position? And we should not put people in a deficit, in a place where they can actually fail, which minimize their ability or their self-worth, or even their even courage to move forward into another position.
So when I think about this is interesting. Like if we take what you're saying about people feeling like they're the right fit and feeling like they're mentally prepared, they're mentally ready. Let's take someone who hypothetically is, like someone
Mhm.
who has been hired for the right reasons, and whether or not they fit boxes.
Right.
They're in a scenario where their skills are being questioned or minimized. And that's what I wanted to ask you about today. How do you recognize, and I mean this is a like one of my big wheelhouses. I've written about gaslighting, I've trained about gaslighting. So we could like have a back and forth about this, kind of like learn from each other today. In your opinion, what do you know of, or how can you recognize subtle signs of
Yes.
gaslighting in the workplace?
Well, one of them could be denying what they said, right? So, "I never told you to meet that deadline. That's not what I said. We didn't say that we were gonna include you in this." Just denying instructions is a kinda like a subtle thing, kinda questioning your comprehension of what has been said, or the guidelines, or the timeline, or you must have misunderstood the expectation. So that's one of the ways that denying what was said or agreed to.
Mhm. How often do you see that happening?
Well, it seems like when you have an organization and they bring in new, fresh blood, I'll say, and you find out this person has all this knowledge, the upper management or that immediate manager feels threatened.
Okay.
They feel threatened about their position because they feel inadequate, and I have taken a reverse approach to this. I have
Oh,
a beautiful team of amazing women and men who work with me, and I encourage everyone to be a leader, and I encourage everyone to go out for that promotion if they feel like they're ready, and if they're not, I said, "Let's work on some things that get you there." So
right.
that, and not having that threat allows them to open up even more, and it helps
Absolutely.
you, because I think it's a reward for me as a leader to say, "Hey, this person became a leader under my leadership." It says a lot about me.
It absolutely does. And I wish more leaders were like that. In fact, I feel like your style of leading is exactly what people who are neurodiverse, highly sensitive, gifted in certain
Yeah,
ways,
yeah.
women, and I love how I said gifted then women, but you know, like gifted women, they need that. However, a
Mhm.
lot of people listening don't have leaders like that.
No, they don't. They
So
don't.
what should they do? Because we're almost talking about two sides of this coin right now. We've got the
Right,
really obvious, even when it's subtle, but the what we don't want, which is the gaslighting,
right,
which we'll keep unpacking a bit because you said something that I want to ask you about in relation to that. But then we also have the side of like what we would like to have. It's almost like an anti-gaslighting workspace.
right. So for me, and I have been through this before, and I've seen this actually play out. Is I always encourage that person, no, keep your documentation, right? Documentation is key. You can go back to that person and say, I want to have I want to follow up. These are the things that you asked about. Here's the email. Here's the note from the meeting.
Here's the receipts.
Here are the receipts, okay? And then as you're doing that, don't discourage yourself. Don't self-sabotage yourself to leave things too quickly. Because I believe that every opportunity is an opportunity not only for them to learn, but for you to learn as well. Because again, the higher up you're going to change, the more adversity you're going to have, and it builds character in you, right? You're going to have to respond. Every person that's on my team, everybody has their separate personalities. I have to deal with those personalities. I don't try to just brush them off and don't deal with them. And then you're building your resume, and you're going to be ready when that opportunity comes. Nobody's going to be able to stop you to go through that door. And you're going to document all of your activity, what your support was, your role, all of those things. You're building your resume even in the midst of this gaslighting.
So, as I'm listening, I'm imagining being the person who's having to do this documenting. Is there a way you think someone can do this that doesn't cause like extra stress, but is something they can kind of naturally integrate into their work flow? Okay.
So being creative, this is one of the suggestions I gave someone before.
Okay.
Go to your manager and say, "Hey, let me be sort of the project liaison to make sure that the project and what we're trying to do is moving along in the process." So you're almost like a project manager. So you have to document, right? Like the next meeting, I'll be the one who take the notes, right? I'm going to get everything now. Everything's done through AI, and especially in the system and Teams. So
That's interesting.
you have those records. So it's kind of like reverse psychology in a way. It's kind of letting them say, "Hey, you're in control, but yes, I'm kind of moving things in a flow where I'm not only protecting the project, but I'm protecting me and my character as well."
You just blew my mind because that's such an interesting, subtle thing that someone can do. Not it it
Mhm.
doesn't always work depending on the workspace. But if
Right,
you're in a space where you feel like you're being shut out or drowned out, you can, and maybe you don't even call yourself a project manager, but
right,
something along the lines of, oh, do you need someone to take the notes at these
right,
meetings?
exactly.
Puts you in a position of power. That's
Right,
interesting. I've
right.
never thought about that.
It's like you're containing your power, you're controlling
Mhm.
your power, you're not releasing your power to that person. They may think they are because to them, of course, they may feel like taking notes, that's just a minor thing. That's what the peons below me do. But
Mhm.
that is a great position because you're in control of the narrative. You're not
Mhm.
allowing the narrative to sway from where it's originally started and or it's going to end.
And another thing that comes to my mind, and I'm curious your thoughts on this, and I think about this actually even as a therapist, as a
Mhm.
clinician. When I train folks that are on my staff, I tell them do not have clinical conversations that carry, let's put it this way, that carry weight or potential risk only over the phone. Like have the conversation and then send kind of like a recap or
Yes,
something. And I could think of this working in a space where you're trying to validate and defend your work and validate and defend your space in the place you're in.
right,
Hmm.
right.
Yeah. Now you said something though that intrigues me about this though, because when I think about the idea of, and actually this plays perfectly into to the domestic violence awareness month piece of
Mhm.
this, like how do you know when to go? And you said on one hand, you're encouraging folks to, and I love it, and I want to know a little bit more about it. You're encouraging folks to like stick it out to a degree and see what you can learn, see what you can overcome. And then there's also this other side where sometimes abuse is abuse
Yes.
and enough is enough. So, how would you suggest someone know the difference between when it's like a hurdle that could strengthen you, which all adversity can, but a
Right.
hurdle that can strengthen you that's worth hurdling versus like it's time to get out?
Right. One of the reasons, one identification that you can kind of hone into is like if they're trying to rewrite history to protect themselves. And for
Mm.
instance, here's an example, like taking the credit for your work,
Ugh, yeah.
blaming you if they
Ted.
blaming you for their oversight, right? They missed something. It's your fault. You didn't bring that. You didn't put that in. Changing the story in the meetings or the emails based off of you already had a conversation with them. And sometimes you have to bring like, you know what, I need somebody else to support and make sure I'm getting this right. So those are some subtle things that you can say, you know what, this person I tried meeting with them. I tried having a one-on-one with them. Then you have to look at your own self, your own credibility, and then your own mental health as well because no one deserves to be abused. And then it goes on to making it seem like you're incompetent. When it gets to that level, it's really time to really shift. You may have to bring in HR.
Now, let's talk about that because I do suggest that often to people
Mhm,
who are experiencing gaslighting in the workplace.
mhm.
However, I think it can feel overwhelming. Like, how much do I tell them? How do I know what I'm saying is going to be protected? Who do I go to? If, for example, I'm just going to throw myself under the bus. I have 10 employees and we don't have an HR department. So, like, how would they deal with that? If, I mean, I'm not gaslighting my
Right.
employees, I hope. But
You're not.
yeah, so what would you suggest if you do have an HR department? Like, how do you go about that? And then if you don't have an HR department, what do you do?
Well, before you go into the HR department, you're always going to have, because they're going to ask for documentation. So again, that goes back to where we already said, making sure you're documenting, the activities and things and what your due diligence was going to your leader, trying to figure out what is the blockage, what is the miscommunication, because a lot of it, sometimes it is, and unfortunately, this is what it is, not unfortunately, women, we're emotional. So a lot of times we don't know how to separate work from home. And so it may not be you personally, it may be something else. And or they may be thinking because you're the one who's always giving and want to help, you're the weakest link, so I can put all of my garbage out and just treat you badly. So that makes and it's time to go to HR. I mean, you shouldn't have to question your safety with mental safety, emotional safety, whatever it is to be in the workplace. You deserve to be in a peaceful workplace. If you don't have an HR person, right? I would recommend that you have somebody that you identify on your team that is all about having cohesiveness on your team. So you have a second person. Look, if you don't want to talk to me like a team lead, I have a team lead on my team. And so there are some meetings that they don't even have me there because I want the team to be real open and feel free to talk about anything. But they know that she's the liaison. She's going to hold some things that, as long as it's not detrimental to the team, as long as it's not detrimental to anybody's character, she'll let them have that free space. If it's something that I need to know, they'll come back to me and say, hey, I think this is the better approach. This is where the root cause of what's going on is happening. So you that do not have an HR person, you can have that liaison between you and your team staff that they can actually go and talk to. And if not, that doesn't work for you, then you have an outside partnership with someone that they can go as a resource to talk to that's going to be not biased at all on either side, non-biased, and be able to give you that feedback that you need to make sure that your team surveys are good too. Anonymous surveys are also good as well, so you can get the feedback and understanding from your team.
I love that. What you were saying kind of made me think of something like I'm reflecting on my own staff again with, there
Mhm.
not being an HR department. If you're listening and you're in a workspace and maybe it's a small business and it's small enough where there's not the protective layer of an HR department, I do believe those workspaces may be more important to take really close account as to whether or not you feel safe and whether or not you feel like you're being gaslit
Mhm.
because of the fact that there's not the extra protective layer.
Right.
And if I think about my staff, for example, in our field in counseling, a lot of times there's supervisors or, outside supervisors or consultation teams or things like that, or your board. So if you're in a medical field and you're in a private practice and there's not an HR department, I'm basically calling myself out for not having one. My employees are going to be like, get us an HR person.
Great person that you can use too.
What was that?
I know a great person you can use as well.
Oh, okay. But each of us has our own licensing board.
Mhm.
And so, really, I mean, if I was in a workspace with a boss and I was in my kind of workspace and I wasn't able to go to someone, I think I would go to my licensing board. But I'm
Mhm.
hearing you say like having the proof, having the receipts is super crucial. And also, by the very nature of what gaslighting is intended to do, it's important psychologically because gaslighting is intended to confuse us and convolute the past. And so, when you are being gaslit, it can be so pervasive that it can actually start to make you question your own reality. And so
Absolutely.
being able to go back and look at the receipts and look at the emails and remind yourself. I
Ab
also encourage people, even if not the HR, but to have a trusted person that you can go through the receipts with so that they can give you that kind of touch point of, yeah, this does sound like gaslighting.
Absolutely. And another
Mhm.
thing too that I think we should talk about when it comes to them gaslighting, someone gaslighting you at work is like, you don't have to convince the gaslighter. Don't sit there and over explain
100%.
your reality to them. Respond with facts, not
Yes.
emotional. Don't
Yes.
be emotional with them because that's what they feed off of that emotion. They want to see you in a frizzy, right? And
Yep.
not, in control. Because that
Mhm.
means if you're out of control, they're in control.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you said that because and this is one of the key distinctions between a malicious gaslighter versus like a subconscious gaslighter. So, for example, if there's someone in your workplace who is just plain out insecure and they convolute the past, they don't let you take credit for, an idea that was yours and you feel safe enough to confront them that first time. You go to them and you say, here's the receipts. This is not true. That was my idea. Let's talk about it.
Right.
If the person is willing to listen and hear you out, that's a sign of someone who's insecure, toxic, potentially not very emotionally mature. If they double down and deny the proof in front of them, that's when you got gaslighting on your hands.
Absolutely, and that's when you need to have your exit strategy on and like we said, go to HR when it's safe, have a trusted colleague, a mentor, therapist, a coach. Keep the conversation documented no matter what.
Right. Okay, so I'm going to take us into a slightly controversial turn with this.
Okay,
You ready?
I'm ready.
So you said, and there's two pieces of this that I wanted to lay out on the table. You said something earlier about the conceptions about women being emotional. So
Mhm.
I'm just gonna put that out. Like I'm
Okay,
like making the bed.
okay.
And then I also want to point out your original statements around DEI and hiring for skill, not attributes, I guess you will. How do you see gaslighting of individuals coming out in the workplace in relation to things around like DEI, so whether it be race, whether it be religion, whether it be gender. And then also, I can't help but say that when you said women are emotional, I was like, oh boy, that's like something that women get gaslit about a lot in the workplace. So, what are your
Well,
thoughts on
there's no
that?
yeah, there's nothing wrong with acknowledging a reality, right? And that's not every woman, women as a whole. We're nurturers, so that can be a positive thing. It's the control of the emotion. That is where the issue comes in. And then if a gaslighter uses that, that's when you have your documentation because They can use that and say, "Hey, you're just emotional, right? You're just a woman, you guys, you're so sensitive, thin skin." I've heard that before, thin skin. That's when that documentation comes in. Again, you don't have to overly explain yourself to that. But it's just a reality that's how we are built. And then there's nothing wrong with it. It's not a negative. However, we have to, make sure that we are aware that when we do respond, that we're not conspiracy theorists and about, what we heard in the office about this particular the leader or whatever. You never know. And I think the easiest way to combat a lot of things, I believe, is conversation. A lot of times we don't have that conversation. We're in a culture now that is so afraid of talking about hard topics like this, right? To hear the other person's perspective. I have been wrong about identifying an issue before, and I had to have a conversation. And with that conversation, I may didn't agree with everything, but I understood where that person was coming from.
Do you think that, well, and we had talked about women. I find it interesting too because I often work with women who are highly sensitive and or just passionate or have endured trauma or all of these things that is really universal. It's not just women, but
Right.
who feel like they need to apologize for their emotions in the workplace. And I would love to just kind of put a statement out here that emotions are not gendered.
Right,
Like
exactly.
sadness doesn't have a gender and
Right.
fear doesn't have a gender, but unfortunately, culture has created this ideal around this that makes it more of a potential gaslighting topic of target.
I think emotions for us as women in the workplace, I think that's one of our superpowers. What the negative part of it is when we allow that emotion to direct our decision making to the fact that we're not thinking about the entire group or the entire organization. We're thinking about what the outcome we want to happen. So I think it can be a superpower because we can be more in tune, more sensitive, especially when it comes to negotiation. We can kind of feel the room a little bit better as women. So it can be a positive, like everything can be a positive and negative. It's like don't let that be the final and only drive that gets you that you lead with, if that makes sense.
I wonder if this varies based on like what industry you're in. Just because obviously my industry is centered on emotions and centered on I remember the first job I ever had was it was one of those boot camps where kids get sent for like a year when they're having a hard time.
Uh-huh.
And I did not live on campus with them. A couple of my good friends did. They were called counselors. I was called family service worker. It was weird. But essentially, I was a therapist. I would kind of breeze in every day, showered, and they they were all, roughing it in the woods with these boys because it was an all boys one, the one that I was at. And they had these things called group ups where if anyone was having a strong emotion, I remember they would flag, they would raise the little symbol, and everyone would have to group up, talk about the emotion, process the emotion. The interesting thing about this space was that the counselors, aka the adult employees, were also encouraged to do this.
That's great.
Right, which was very different and very new to me. And so it's something that as a leader who is aware of neurodiversity personally is something I really encourage. Like
Mhm.
I let my employees know I want to know about your emotions up
Yeah.
front. So in a way I kind of want to know about the emotions that are coupled with decisions. I could see how in certain industries though,
Yeah,
it
especially
doesn't
the military. The military,
mm,
that's something that,
by
you know
their sheer training.
absolutely. So you
Mhm.
see a lot of women in the military, they're headstrong, they're focused, right? Because it's not just them. They have a troop. They have, all the commands that are required of them as well. So, and I love the fact that they had that emotional outlet. And I think as women, that's where we have we need a lot more space because we have to sometimes, or we say, or we're told that we have to suppress our emotions because we have to take care of kids. So you can't be emotional. You got to focus on taking care of kids. We got to take care of the house. You can't be emotional because you got to get your work done. So you're doing that. You got to go to your job. You can't be emotional because So yes, that having that outlet like that, having those times in that space, and we call it in our corporation, they used to call it water cooler, but now they call it cheer because they want people to come there. They have their own private space and it's online because I manage nurses that work from home online. So it's all online. They meet in their group on Teams and they call it cheer. Cheer, you talk about anything. And so
That's
they have that
cool.
release.
I love that. Well, interestingly, too, when I think about the whole conversation we're having, I have a service that I offer called the Workplace Checkup, where I
Nice.
go into businesses and I let them know straight up without I'm not nice about it. I'm very upfront with them and I let them know what are the things that are hindering your staff, especially those who are highly sensitive, those who are neurodiverse, those who have gifts that are being squashed by the industry or by the culture. Now, you brought up the military, which is like when we think about what is a space where emotions are meant to be buttoned up. I mean, it's almost like, okay, let's call an apple an apple. Military is just like it's a little obvious, right? I see this with some of, because I work in the Triangle, which is, like the Silicon Valley of the East, and I have a
Right.
lot of engineers I work with.
Yes.
And I see this happening a lot with my female. This whole conversation has kind of turned into gaslighting women in the workplace, but I see this a lot with my female engineers who are in male centered spaces that aren't outright saying you have to button up your emotions, but it's kind of this unspoken cultural expectation.
That is so interesting that you mentioned that because I was just at NC University and I was on the
Why
podcast.
didn't you
I didn't
visit?
know. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me.
Next time.
I'll make it up. And I was on their podcast and engineers podcast, and that is some of the conversation, about them being, the minority in there and how it's kind of like a
Right.
unwritten, right, that you have to be, so self-controlled and all of that. And I say as women be women. I talk about this all the time. Just because you work in a male dominant corporation, you don't have to take on male traits. Still be a woman, and you can still lead as well.
However, do you see things like assertiveness and strength and power and all of those things as female traits as well, or do you see them as male traits?
No, because I think it depends. I've seen it from one side to the other side. I've seen people overcompensate to prove themselves, and so they're more aggressive. And normally, if you were to see them on a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday morning, they're not that way because they feel like they have to be that way in order to obtain respect. And I've seen it the other way where that's just their personality. When you're authentic, I mean, you're authentic, then that's the way you are, and people respect that. And I think that's where the division is when it's not authentic.
It's interesting because it's kind of like the idea of masking, where women are really from very early in their childhoods asked to behave or be agreeable or be
Mm.
polite. It's one of the reasons why, honestly, why women are so prevalent to have things like autoimmune issues, chronic pain, anxiety, depression,
Even
passive
cancer. Yeah.
yeah, yes. Oh no, correct. Different health issues as a result of chronic masking. And so it's interesting because you can chronically mask emotions like, the soft side of emotions that we were talking about. And then you can also mask maybe I'm a New Yorker, I don't know, but I'm definitely a more assertive personality and I always have been. I remember once I think it was when I worked at the methadone clinic downtown. We were at a treatment team meeting and I was really passionate about something. And I didn't think about it at the time that I was being asked to mask. And now that I look back on it, There was a middle-aged man. I just remember like salt and pepper hair, really kind guy. Like I'm not saying his name on purpose, but really kind man. I really enjoy him. I enjoyed him overall. But I just have this vision of him looking at me and telling me that I should slow down when I talk. And at the time, I was like, oh, he's being so caring. He's trying to help me regulate my nervous system. And now when I look back, I'm like, huh, I think he was asking me to mask my personality a little bit. I think my passion and my like hyperactive brain
Mhm.
was stressing him out.
Well, because we all, we all receive information differently. Some people receive it a little bit slower than others. And it could be, I mean, you could look at it that way. That's one way to look at it. Or it could be, I am not getting the information as fast as you're giving me the information.
Like maybe it was not
I'm
me.
not, it's not so clear because I can't keep up with you. So it
Yeah, good
may not
point.
be just I wouldn't look at it totally as a negative because I know I talk fast and I purposely slow down because I know my brain is going so fast right now. I can say all of these things. However, will the audience get the message? And I don't want the message to be missed.
Right. And that's where I think the gaslighting in the workplace becomes such a different phenomenon or experience than in our kind of quote everyday life because
Right,
I don't need feedback on my delivery really in everyday life. Like I can make choices about who my friends are, well, you can't really
correct.
choose your family all the time, but kind of who you spend your time with. But if your major goal is to achieve a professional goal, you might be put into situations where you're around personalities that differ from your natural state.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. So you have to take that in consideration.
Mhm.
And I tell people a lot of times, don't always have that wall up and be defensive and think the negative. That's my approach to it. And is there something I can learn? And then if you identify if they're gaslighting, you deal with it, you address it. Don't, walk on eggshells about it. And I think that's where a lot of people, again, it goes back to having those difficult conversations.
Mhm.
There's no need to gossip with the
Mhm.
rest of your teammates. There's no need.
Mhm.
Deal with it head on. And
Mhm.
then you take you take whatever steps that you need to take to make sure
Mhm.
that you're protected and make sure that you're working in a safe environment. You deserve that.
Right. Right. And to the point that I think we covered earlier, but just to like drive it home with what you're saying right now, the gaslighter is not who you're going to try to do this with if they are truly gaslighting you. Like taking an initial crack at it,
Mhm.
seeing how they respond. But if they don't respond in a healthy way, and if they double down, if they increase their gaslighting, if they ostracize you, they are not the person to do this with. Going to someone or an entity above them. And
Absolutely.
maybe, just maybe, that workspace is not safe for you. And that is okay too. Like,
That's
we
okay.
really haven't enforced that. But if you're listening and you're thinking, well, geez, these women are telling me to just deal with it,
No,
that is not what
absolutely
we're saying.
not.
Right. That is not what we're saying. Knowing what's happening takes the power away from the gaslighting in the first place.
Yes,
Reinforcing it again and again with a trusted entity or person, going back to the receipts, checking in with your authentic self, and seeing whether your true authentic self matches with the culture of that company
mhm,
are all super important steps.
absolutely. And it may
Hmm.
just be not a cultural fit for you, and it's okay.
Right. That's perfectly fine too. So, oh my gosh, Dr. Rita Renee, I could talk to you forever about this topic, but is there anything that, let's say someone to kind of give people a cherry on top for the end of the conversation. They've identified it, they've addressed it. Maybe, hopefully, let's say fingers crossed for the scenario, it's addressed. But now they're still walking into work feeling uncomfortable because gaslighting can impact your mental health
Yeah.
over the long term and your self esteem over the long term. What would you say to someone to help them reinforce their strength, going forward now that the gaslighting has hopefully been addressed and they should be able to reclaim their goals and their power in this job or this career that matters to them?
The main thing I would say is awareness is power. Like, this is not a me problem. It's not your problem. This is manipulation, and you do what you need to do to protect yourself, your mental health, and your safety. You don't have to apologize to anyone.
Love that so much. Well, Dr. Rita Renee, it was so good to see you. I'm like fingers crossed that our talks will be out by the time this episode airs. But and I really appreciate too your ability to have a conversation where like we kind of saw some of it a little bit differently. I could sense that at times, and I think that that's refreshing. I think it's good to get different people's perspectives and like the different way that we look at it, because you said some things today that I hadn't never thought of. And hopefully I said some things that maybe you hadn't either.
Absolutely. I love this conversation. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much for being here. And I hope everyone is able to go out, feel empowered, do the thing, report the thing, stick up for yourself, and be well, everyone.